Hi all and welcome to another episode of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. We've got a packed show tonight. Lots of interesting bits as usual. Something rather interesting near the end. And lots of exposure, confirmations of previous things said in previous shows, warnings for the public on a few items, and the usual roundup of news and views from around the world. Right, I would like to welcome one and all, including the people who like to dissect our show each week. Like our members, I know they can't wait for this show each week. They get all giddy at the prospect of a new show. Well, not surprisingly now they talk of Thomas has a point there, to be fair. Be careful now, we are becoming infectious, you know. So it's been an event-filled week whereby I rarely read the news because it's too conflicting to me. The story of 3 white men with glasses, then an Hispanic-looking male turns up with the name Crucius. It's not very white, that name, is it? Does it mean crucify? And then we had the news channel reporting directly out of the portal and reporting events to us 25 minutes ahead of time. Nice of them to warn us. But you would think with that level of insight, perhaps they should replace the FBI to prevent further incidents, do you not think? And also, like magic this week, the media ran the 2 agendas that this show has warned of for a while. White supremacy, which is an illusion in and of itself, we're all slaves, and gun crime. And they wheeled out the failed Pindar Sotero to demand changes in gun laws. This is the very same man who spent 8 years in the White House. Why didn't he change them then? And let's not forget that he was also part of the cover-up of Fast and Furious, which involved high-level government employees, including him, doing what? Giving guns to Mexican criminal gangs. It's one thing laughing at the other. As for all the shootings this week, the fact remains, unless you were there, you cannot verify with 100% proof all got shot or none got shot. Some died or none died. Assuming they did is not and never was fact. And too much of our day-to-day narrative is based on assumption, not fact. Largely fed to us by fake news from their world, not ours. Now, I want to clear something up from last week. I made an error. I mentioned in one of the pieces last week that the new Fed building in Macau near Singapore, actually it's near China, not Singapore, so I just wanted to clear that up. A couple of things that have cropped up this week, and some more shows and some more clown behaviour. People ask me, should I write a book? Oh dear. Should I attend more calls? Should I do more Zoom calls? And Thomas should do this, and Thomas should do that, and Thomas should do the other. Or I need to speak to you privately. Or the classic, I know you're busy, but please watch this 2-hour video and give me an assessment. Or read this 2 to 3 page email and get back to me with your opinions. We'll have more on lengthy emails shortly. Oh dear. So people would like me to write a book. One would like to ask, where do you think I will get the time to do that? I wonder do people think whether I'm entitled to have some sort of personal life. Not that it's much as it is. Well, we do have all the shows. Yes, they're long shows to listen to. But the must listen to shows give an overview. I think it's 13 or 14 now. And they're mounting up, and there'll be more soon. But we also have the transcripts on Patreon. You know, sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks behind. because I forget, as I have too much to do. That in and of itself is a mini book each week. You know, it's about 9, 10, 11 pages long of the Intel, sub-Intel portions, some pieces that I address early on in the show, and all the op-eds. So all the pieces are there. Those transcripts have been there now that covers all the shows for the past 2 years. They're all there. You know, it's a lot quicker to read than to listen to a 3-hour show. So if you want to catch up on things or want to read the book, it's already there. You know, it's up to people to study and learn. And let's not forget, we also have the new ebook done by some of the members that covers a vast amount of topics contained within the show, and also some personal opinions on the way they see things. So that's available on the file section of MeWe and also the Facebook page. Go and check it out. You know, want a book, it's there. So we had 2 shows last weekend, a disrupted show with Randy, and so not to be defeated, we ran the show again on Alan's platform. That was 3 hours of total information on many important topics that affect us day to day. And it was great input from all, and these shows seem to be universally popular, and we will endeavour to do at least one show each month with varying topics for the 3 of us to cover. So look forward to that. So that's 1 extra show per month, and then on Sunday we did a new show for THI called Inside the Matrix, that covers similar topics to the Ground Crew Command show, as I understand it. And we had a fairly rip-fire 2-hour show that spanned thousands of years and dimensions, and was quite an introduction for Jimmy's listeners. I hope their heads have recovered. Whilst the topics are not necessarily new, some of the information contained is. And I want to say thanks to Jimmy, who was a great host, allowed the guests to speak and engaged in a rather good way. Well, we had quite an impact on that show as well, and they have asked me now to come on the first Sunday of each month now. So that's 2 extra shows per month we've got to do now. And people still want me to write a book in between. Like I said, I've written several books, and it's your obligation to read them on my Patreon. And if you feel you need to understand or learn more, it's all in there, and you can always ask questions when we have the Q&A section, which is not as common as it was, but there you go. Coming up this weekend, there will be 2 shows again. Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be a must listen to and important for all show to grasp. Now, I've done it at that time so members in the EU and the UK can listen live. And if their schedules fit in, which it looks like they will, near the end of the show I might bring Randy and Alan on for a short time also. On Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing an evening for Thomas, where people can find out some of my life and background, with Alan from Circle of White Light being the host. So look forward to that. From Russia with Love 7 is still in the works because of what is this is by Sunday I'll have done 7 shows in 12 days, and so From Russia with Love is still being worked on and is close to completion for a show release. These are busy times, and I suspect it will get busier here on in. 2 points of contention for how people wish to play games in the background. I know some people don't like this, but people need to be aware of these people's names because they're doing their utmost to disrupt our group. But this time, Kim received an email Kim and I both get lots of emails, some complimentary, some not, some useful, some not. But now and again, we get special emails, ones that make your eyes water at the stupidity of it, or the total hilarity of it, like Kim got this week. And so we feel, well, certainly I do anyway, that a special award is in order for this particular email. Providing they can send us their mental institution PO box address, we will send them a special streak-free pane of glass in its own frame with your names on it, which you can both lick and drool on for the rest of your days. Take a bow, Denise Wessels, Yap Anus, what a name, and pre-drag queen Saint Germain. The time you took to compile that pile of drivel, you may have been better taking your meds and getting on board the short bus. Dear me. Final minor issue I need to clear up. There's been a lot of issues going on with the Australia-New Zealand group, and I've heard it's now closed. And some of them wanted me to do a lengthy Zoom call to explain, which I don't have the time to do. And people know now in THI you have to go to great lengths over a long period of time to be removed from the group. People get lots of chances. People play on those lots of chances. They think they can push the boundaries. So the key to it is not to ask myself or the admins why the X, Y or Z has been removed, but to ask the X, Y or Z why they went so far with poor behaviour to facilitate their removal from the group. That is the question to ask. Now, things have been said to the members in Australia and New Zealand that are 100% not correct. At no point did I criticise any of the Australian members other than the offending one. You all know who she is now. And they are spreading disinformation to deliberately disrupt the group. It was going on while she was in the group, and it's gone on since. I want the members of that group to restart the group without those two particular members. They're not needed, they're not helpful. And carry on. All members are important to me, doesn't matter what colour you are, what religion you are, what race you are. All members are important. What is not important is clowns disrupting our group, and there are many of them. Many of them have been removed. So please get together and reassemble the group without the offending two members. If they're going to continue to behave poorly, let them do it on the outside. We don't need these people. They're children in adult bodies and need to put some adult pants on. Right, let's get into some news on a momentous day, or it was a momentous day for the tribal nations. Darth's daughter, Congressman Liz Cheney, the House of Republican Conference chairwoman, stated that the successful litigation by the tribes and environmentalists to return the grizzly bears to the Greater Yellowstone to the Endangered Species Act was not based on science or facts, according to her, but motivated by plaintiffs' intent on destroying our Western way of life. All sounds very Rothschild, that, doesn't it? What Rothschild said to Kim, you're ruining our way of life. Too right we are. Yeah. And one of the largest tribal plaintiff alliances in recent memory prevailed in the landmark case Crow Tribe et al. Versus Zinke last September, when US District Judge Dana Christian ruled in favour of the tribes and the environmental groups after finding that the Trump administration's US Fish and Wildlife Service had failed to abide by the ESA, which is Endangered Species Act, and exceeded its authority in attempting to remove federal protection for the grizzly bears. Now on Tuesday, the Wildlife Service officially returned federal protections to the grizzly bear, and removing protections from them, revered as sacred to a multitude of tribes, would have left the grizzly vulnerable to high-dollar trophy hunts and lifted leasing restrictions on 34,375 square miles. Now, extractive industry, livestock and logging interests are amongst those who desired of capitalising on that area, and a region of that comprised of tribal treaty, reserved rights and ceded lands. And there was a quote from Tom Rogers, a senior advisor to the Rocky Mountain tribal leaders, said that if it wasn't Liz Cheney and the era of the Trump administration, you might be rendered speechless by the insensitivity and mendacity of that statement. That's replying to Darth's daughter. Now, Mr. Rogers testified at May's congressional hearing on the Tribal Heritage and Grizzly Bear Protection Act, H.R. 2532, which was introduced by House Natural Resource Committee Chairman Raul Grijalva, and was inspired by the Grizzly Treaty signed by over 200 tribal nations, and said, so in striving to protect our culture, our religious and spiritual freedoms, our sovereignty and our treaty rights, all of which are encapsulated in the grizzly issue, we are destroying Cheney's idea of the Western way of life. And he went on, I would remind the Congresswoman that at the time of the Lewis and Clark expedition, an estimated 100,000 grizzly bears roamed from the Missouri River to the Pacific coast. All of that was Indian country. Now there are fewer than 2,000 grizzly bears, and our people live in third world conditions on meagre reservations in the poorest counties in the US. Here. Two things about that. There's no need for the tribal people to live on meagre reservations or in poorest counties either. The chiefs of those tribes need to get their act together and give back to the people all the money they're creaming off nature via the oil wells that are dotted all over their lands. You know, it brings in a lot of money, not to mention the casinos. And it's time they got their act together and gave back some of those ill-gotten gains and profits to their own people. Otherwise, they're no different to the cabal. They collect everything and give nothing back. It's no different. And the tribal people en masse need to get their act together. There's a lot of money in those tribes, particularly in the casinos and the oil industries, and they need to give back. And there are funds available for all tribes when they are released. But if you think we're giving it to all the chiefs, you can think again, because most of them, right round the world, as we've found out in several talks, are corrupt or following the wrong path. Does she really want to talk about destroying a way of life? Asked Rogers of Cheney, talking about our way of life. What would she know about life? Most Westerners are happy to have areas for the wildlife. It's only psychopath families like hers that wish to build, dig and destroy everything. and it's time she got back in the bunker with her dad, Darth Vader, if you ask me. Why is she even there? Foreign nationals operating in Johannesburg's CBD have condemned what they call serious human rights violations perpetrated by heavy-handed police officers. Those police are becoming a big problem globally. They ought to be very careful going forward. And these denunciations come in the wake of severe upheaval in the city centre, which last Thursday erupted into a full-scale riot. Gauteng law enforcement agencies descended on the CBD as part of Operation OK Malau, with the aim to crack down on counterfeit goods, they said. But it turned into something completely different, as we all know. And David Makora and the chief of Johannesburg Metro Police, David Tembe, stated a large crowd of foreign national fought back against law enforcement officers. Makora explained that the police came under attack from bricks and petrol bombs as hordes of rioters cornered the law enforcement officers. Some people will fight back, many are. And their police operation was abruptly terminated. Makora has since vowed to retaliate against foreign nationals who attacked police officers. And the Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba, who has been especially critical of the influx of, quote, undocumented foreigners, unquote, into the city and called for a shutdown of the area. I will speak more on that later. The US military is conducting wide area surveillance tests across 6 Midwest states using, quote, experimental, unquote, high altitude balloons. Our documents filed with the Federal Communications Commission reveal up to 25 unmanned solar-powered balloons are being launched from rural South Dakota and drifting 250 miles through an area spanning portions of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin and Missouri before concluding in central Illinois. Travelling in the stratosphere at altitudes up to 65,000 feet, the balloons are intended to provide a persistent surveillance system to locate and deter narcotic trafficking and homeland security threats. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. According to a filing made on behalf of the Sierra Nevada Corporation, who are an aerospace and defense company, not FBI or Homeland Security, military. Now, the balloons are carrying high-tech radars designed to simultaneously track many individual vehicles day or night through any kind of weather, and the tests, which have not previously been reported, received an FCC license to operate from mid-July until September, following similar flights licensed last year. So it's not exactly experimental, is it? More spying on the people. Perhaps because that is also a confirmation that their five eyes went blind. So now they're using balloons. Oh my. The nearly 2-year special counsel investigation of Russian election interference led by Mueller has determined the final cost of nearly $32 million in total, a new filing this week shows. Now, the special counsel's fourth and final expenditures report took significantly longer to disclose than prior filings, I'm not surprised, and arrived weeks after the Justice Department officials expected it to be made public. Now, in its absence, political leaders, including Mr. Trump and House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, have made the cost of the investigation a focal point of their arguments for or against it. So 32 million. And what has it achieved? Now, Trump, for his part, stated last November that the investigation final costs would be more than 40 million. I will be commenting on again later. Here's another announcement of experimental, something that the alternative media knew many years ago. The Air Force think we're all stupid and announced on Friday it will soon deploy 2 ground-based laser weapons to an undisclosed location to test how they can be used against small drones. Again, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. The service's first operational field test of an experimental directed energy weapon, they called it, DEW, as we know it, DEW. Now, the Air Force announced a $23 million sole source contract for 2 of Raytheon's high-energy laser weapon systems, through which the systems are to be tested. They've already been tested. You used them in California and at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida for 12 months in an undisclosed contested environment outside the continental United States. Really. And they said what we really want to do is figure out how we can deploy these systems in an environment where our warfighters work and train every day, according to Evan Hunt, with a silent Director of High Energy Laser and Counter UAS at Raytheon. Now, UAS stands for Unmanned Aerial System. So, drone. Because laser weapons could fire constantly without wasting ammunition, military technology experts have theorized they could one day be useful in combating the small, remotely operated quadcopter drones that ISIS has used. And they are also expected to be an effective counter against swarming attack drones, a concept that a handful of countries are exploring. Now, the fact that it is a laser weapon allows you to put energy in a target at the speed of light, and it can be instantaneous heating event, according to Michael Gergis, who leads the Air Force's Directed Energy Experimentation Projects. More nonsense, that is, of presenting something that is new and the future to the public. Experimental testing when it was created and used long in the past. And another example of wrong thinking, of getting technology and weaponizing it for something that has no real purpose for humanity. How about they use that directed energy weapon as part of an astrological project of incoming meteors or certain rock throwing events from certain clan groups? How about they use it for that? Something that's going to actually benefit humanity, not hinder them. And this is where, going forward, we have to change the mindset and the thinking behind all technology, because virtually every single piece of technology has been weaponized against the people. Where are we? Yeah, we're doing okay. A veteran FBI agent who wrote derogatory text messages about Donald Trump filed a lawsuit on Tuesday charging that the Bureau caved to unrelenting pressure from the president when it fired him. The suit on Peter Strzok also alleges that he was unfairly punished for expressing his political opinions, and that the Justice Department violated its privacy when it shared hundreds of his text messages with reporters. And the campaign to publicly vilify Special Agent Strzok contributed to the FBI's ultimate decision to unlawfully terminate him, according to the lawsuit, as well as to frequent incidences of public and online harassment and threats of violence to Strzok and his family that began when the texts were first disclosed to the media and continue to this day. Now, the complaint, which names as defendants Attorney General William Barr and FBI Director Chris Wray, revisits a political drama that was seized on by conservative critics of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation as proof that the Bureau was biased against Trump. Multiple investigations are underway examining whether the FBI acted properly really during the Russian investigation, and Strzok remains a frequent target of Trump's scornful tweets. Last piece before we have a music break and go into sub-intel. Federal Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who is Jewish and was involved in the Paul Manafort case and also the Roger Stone case, and whose husband worked for export enforcement agents under George Bush, this week tossed out a criminal charge against former Obama White House counsel Greg Craig. No surprise. And a blow to the Justice Department's efforts this year to prosecute foreign lobbying violations as criminal acts. Connecting the dots. Jackson threw out a charge that accused Craig of making a criminal false statement by omitting information about his work for a foreign government on a letter sent to the Justice Department in 2013. A scheme offence must be based on active falsification or concealment and not merely passivity or silence, she added, citing previous court cases about false statements. Now, Craig is still charged with engaging in a scheme to knowingly falsify a foreign lobbying disclosure to the Justice Department. And essentially he had not told the Justice Department he had worked alongside Paul Manafort as a paid agent of Ukrainian politicians. Oops. And the judge threw it out. Now, the deal ends a lawsuit the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee filed back in 2012 after the House voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt for refusing to release some records the panel demanded about the probe. Connecting the dots again. During which law enforcement officials watched but did not intervene, as up to 2,000 weapons were illegally sold. Now, the fight over the records ended more than a year ago, but a proposed settlement ran aground last fall after the US District Judge signalled that they would refuse to wipe out the rulings in the case. That was the Fast and Furious that I mentioned earlier. The name of the judge that threw that out? Amy Berman Jackson. Now you understand why it was so important about reforming the Justice Department and the high-level judges. Because every case that comes forward, these stooges that are deliberately installed there on behalf of factions will shut it down. It's not a justice system, it's a racketeering. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. There we go. Oops. A little technological mistake there. Right, we're going to get into sub-intel, which are hints, indicative, and confirmation of previous pieces we've put out, and also warnings, what people need to take heed of. And most of this sub-intel is based on two things: gun control and white supremacy, or the perception of it. They are the two programs they're running, and as you will see, it's not just in America either. Now, this piece was written for the BBC with the latest agenda-driven script-based writer by the name of Anthony Zurcher, out of Texas, apparently that man is. And he wrote, "It's become a familiar refrain after every mass shooting in the US. Will this time be different? Will outrage over the violence compel political action, as it has done in the UK after Dunblane, which was a staged event to cover up child paedophilia, Australia after Port Arthur, and most recently New Zealand after Christchurch? Among gun control activists, there is a certain amount of resignation whenever a new incident splashes across the headlines. If public sentiment did not force action after the 2012 Newtown shooting, when 26 people, including 20 young children, were killed in a Connecticut school, Newtown, and nothing will ever change." That's Sandy Hook, isn't it? Funny how they just changed the names, isn't it? I'm sure that's Sandy Hook. Perhaps one of the members can confirm that. And I didn't realise that. But it's a common theme how they just shift the name and the change in the vowels that they use with their own names, never mind with certain places and countries. Well, it was Czechoslovakia. Where's Czechoslovakia now? Where's Yugoslavia now? All gone, hidden in other fake names. And he went on. If the double tragedy of El Paso and Dayton ends up being different, however, here are a few possible explanations. Recent mass shootings in the US have been attributed to a variety of causes: disaffected youth, Parkland and Santa Fe, mental illness, Annapolis, workplace conflict, Virginia Beach, and family discord, Sutherland Springs. The deadliest such incident in modern US history, the 2017 shooting at a music concert in Las Vegas that claimed 58 lives, still has no attributed motive. 2 years on after the Vegas incident, nothing. Does it ever get mentioned? No. You're not telling me that the FBI and the CIA, after 2 years, haven't found a motive. Or perhaps they have, and you know who the real motive and why it was done. Perhaps they need to read the alt media more instead of fact-checking nonsense. In this case, however, all evidence indicated that the El Paso shooting was a calculated political act drawn from the white nationalist rhetoric that has become increasingly prominent in modern US politics, which is a swipe at Trump. In that way, it's more akin to last October's Pittsburgh, they can't go without mentioning what happened to the synagogue shooting, which prompted discussions about rising anti-Semitism. The two always go together. Whenever there's an incident, the victim police of anti-Semitism always pop up. It's a common theme. Yes, we know that Jewish people are not being treated right, none more than their own leaders. But ramming it down people's throats of only one group is the victim or only one group is the perpetrator is wrong on both counts. Or the violence in Charlottesville, which served as a jarring display of the strength of the modern white supremacist movement. That was written by Mr. Zurcher in the BBC in the UK. You'll see there'll be more incidents as this sub-intel unfolds. But it's time for the BBC and the agency scriptwriters to change their fake narrative and address the real issues of fear-generated false flag events. There's your scoop. There's your real story. Who is doing it and why? Now, these events does not necessarily mean some didn't die. No one's discounting that. But like I said earlier, I can't prove whether people died or not, and neither can most of the people who listen to this show. We're going on assumption, not fact. But the real story involves Langley, Montauk, and Mengele-based psyops done under mind control techniques. That's the real scoop. And this is the real issue here, and it does need attention from all people in the alt media. Add in the fact that these extremist groups, as they're called, KKK, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, white supremacy, you name what, call it all you like, they were all created by the same think tank groups. When you cover that, Mr. Zurcher, then you have a real story. Not, there's the boogeyman. The boogeyman currently is the white man. It has been for the last over 100 years. They've smudged the issue, that it's this issue and that issue, but that's the real agenda. And you'll see why as we carry on. Something that we'd been mentioned previous, the American middle class, and how it's collapsing. We don't need so-called financial experts or clown portal people to tell us that. But there was a report out this week is that the middle class has fallen deeper into debt to maintain a middle class lifestyle. Please stop doing it. Why? It's only a status. A home is something to live in, not a status symbol. Fancy cars. A car is something to get you from A to B. It's not a status symbol. And when you understand that, a lot less people will be in debt. But cars, college, houses and medical care have become steadily more costly, but incomes have largely remained stagnant for 2 decades, despite a recent uptick. It still doesn't cover the shortfall. Filling the gap between earning and spending is an explosion of finance into nearly every corner of the consumer economy. Consumer debt, not counting mortgages, has now climbed to $4 trillion. $4 trillion. Higher than it's ever been after adjusting for inflation. Mortgage debt slid after the financial crisis a decade ago, but is now rebounding. Student debt totaled $1.5 trillion last year. $1.5 trillion of debt passed on to the children to learn shite. They're not teaching them nothing of any value anyway. And that student debt exceeds all other forms of consumer debt except mortgages. Car debt is up nearly 40% in the last decade to $1.3 trillion. And the average loan for new cars is up an inflation adjusted 11% in a decade. the average loan is $32,000 per car. $32,000. You know, it's not that long ago. A couple of decades you could buy a whole house for that. And land. And that's the average. 32,000. So most of them are 60, 70,000 for a car. You know, we've lost all sense of value of what is important in life. $60,000, $70,000 for a car. I don't really care if it's laced in gold. It's still not relevant. The idea that Americans are middle class is an illusion. All of it is an illusion. You're not middle class. You are working class with a massive amount of credit card debt that gives the illusion of being middle class. And the sooner we all get off this status of class, the sooner we all get out of debt. Because we're all doing it to each other. One neighbour gets a new car, the next one goes and buys a bigger, more expensive car. All you're doing is putting yourself in more debt. Status is costly for us all, and a ruination of a whole nation, because far too many in this country, and the Western world I might add, has bought into the credit card debt cycle. And it's ruining all our lives. Just to go and go, ooh, look at my nice shiny car, or ooh, look at my house, ooh, look, I've got a pool. Really? And you're paying 7 years of hundreds of dollars a month, or 30 years of thousands of dollars a month just to impress other people, most of which those people are envious. Again, it's not creating a good cycle, is it? And this is what we talk about in this show, of thinking different. We have to jump off items, materialistic items, particularly items that are essential. And a car is largely essential in America now because we have no infrastructure. And a home is for living in, not to impress or make your friends and circle envious. We have to stop it. Pope Francis chimed in, I wish he hadn't, this week, with this statement: let us pray that the Lord will free the victims of human trafficking and help us to respond actively to the cry for help of so many of our brothers and sisters who are deprived of their dignity and freedom. Fair comment, the last. It's the Lord aspect that bothers me, and the church aspect. Because it was the Lord and his bunch of lizard minions who started that shit, passed it down to and through the churches and into the houses. Oops. The Lord is dead and will not be returning. Praying is not the answer, because if prayers worked, that shit wouldn't have happened to begin with. Let's get it right. But deal with it in hard actions is the answer, not waffle. Where are we next? BBC again doesn't like Mr. Trump because, why? Because MI5, MI6 run the BBC along with GCHQ and the Blue Dragon Group, who love Anne. That's Hillary for those who are new to the show. But the BBC labelled a person a Trump supporter. Like, since when has political persuasion been brought into criminal acts? It's a criminal act, not what party he supports. But these are different times. And a Trump supporter who admitted sending mail bombs to critics of the US president has now been jailed for 20 years. Cesar Sayoc, a 57-year-old ex-pizza delivery man from Florida, posted 16 pipe bombs to 13 targets last October. And prosecutors called for a life sentence for Sayoc, who said it was motivated by hate-filled ideology. Now, the issue is why and since when has political persuasion been mentioned as a motive for crime? Only when an agenda is being ran, and these agendas are racking up on a daily basis, and the members need to watch for it and call it out. That's how we stop it, not ignore them, shut them up. State facts. They don't like that. But one wonders, when is there going to be a crime in Boston? If this is the way things are going to be reported, when there's a next major crime in Boston, are we going to see the headline, Boston Red Sox supporter who are linked with Standard Charter and child trafficking commits a murder, to make the headlines? Will we ever see that? No, of course we won't. It's not in the agenda. And it goes on round the world. This is in China, responding to the Australian government. China this week sharply rebuked an Australian government MP for comparing the West's approach to China to what he called the catastrophic failure to hold back Nazi Germany. Connecting the dots now: white supremacists, Trump, Nazi Germany, Nazis, anti-Semitism, it's all one package. Then we go to Germany itself. Fears of far-right violence are growing in Germany after politician Walter Lubcke was shot dead in June, allegedly by a far-right wing extremist. For those who don't know, far-right is white nationalism again. And they also went on, in one quiet area of Berlin, local residents are being targeted by far-right people. BBC again ran this headline this week: El Paso shooting. Has the US neglected fight against white extremism? You seeing the pattern? BBC again this week, quoting Yvonne Diaz, who burst into tears like the Greenberg girl who turns up at every event wailing into a mobile phone. She said, quote, "I've never ever been scared of being Hispanic ever before, but now I am." And that went right around the world. But I wonder how much that girl was paid to read that script. Of course, there's never been gun violence on a mass scale in Hispanic countries, has there? Oh no, that never happens. There's never been any Mexican cartels, no FARC guerrillas, no MS-13 gangs. Dearie me. I've never been scared of being Hispanic ever before. These people love their fear programs. That's what they're doing. And they're pushing it all onto one group, then connecting it to the government because it fits their agenda. And it's up to us all to stop their agenda-driven drivel the media is providing to us on a daily basis. So we had 3 shootings, 3 similar looking white men, a media narrative of white supremacists rammed down everyone's throats, and for those too stupid to get it, the American people are being steered into civil war. That's what they're doing. And one hopes you all have more intelligence than to fall for that nonsense. People of all colours have to get smart. They've pulled this stunt on us several times, so we fight each other and leave them alone. Dig deeper and you will find we all have a common enemy. Even this week, Trump made a speech on where he appealed for unity over racism. But only in the American media, politicians and the criminal corrupt BBC can that message be deemed as a negative. He is correct. I would have liked him to have gone further and tell the public you are being played by think tank groups and agenda-driven Democrats. That party is the last ever to talk about racism, given the paramilitary arm of the Democrat Party was and is the KKK. The same KKK that was created for and by the Democrats in the 1860s, that murdered Republican politicians and tens of blacks in a convention in the same time period. Go and check it out for yourselves. The media turned on, well, it wasn't just the media, they'll jump in on anything, but the mayor of Chicago decided to attack Ivanka this week for highlighting a range of deadly shootings in Chicago again this week. Happens every week. And she said, as we grieve over the evil mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, let us not overlook that Chicago experienced its deadliest weekend of the year, with 7 dead and 52 wounded near a playground in the Windy City, and little national outrage or media coverage. And she said, we mustn't become numb to the violence faced by inner city communities every day. Again, all sounds good to me and the average person, except the media, and except the Obama-backed Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot. She took umbrage because Ivanka, in a tweet, not a letter, which means it only contains a number of characters, that all the incidents took place in or near a playground. She picked up on that. A typical ridiculous response and a deliberately misrepresented to fit an agenda. The number of people Ivanka reported dead was 7. Official death reports 7. Number of people Ivanka said was wounded 52. Official number reported of being wounded 52. Both of which was correct, regardless of which part of Chicago it took place in. And it's this type of childish responses that the American people need to wake up to. Whilst they bicker over minute details, they are neglecting their real responsibility of looking after the region and the people they are paid to do so. Let's have a look, like Amy Berman Jackson, let's have a look at who is Lori Lightfoot and what has she done to prevent more gun violence in Chicago. Is it Miss Lightfoot or Light Brain? One has to ask. 293 gun deaths in Chicago this year alone. which is only 33 short of the whole of last year. And she needs to focus on that, not misrepresenting tweets. But Miss Lightfoot has other issues in the background, and one has to question why she's even got such a high promotional position to begin with. Let's look at what happened with her in 1999. Lightfoot was issued a warning for misconduct by the Judge Richard Posner in a case in which she was found by the United States Court of Appeal for the Seventh Circuit to have, quote, misled a United States Circuit judge regarding a suspect's whereabouts. In other words, hiding criminals. Which then made it impossible for the judge to get a stay of extradition of that subject to Norway. Even after that, was appointed originally into public office by Rahm Emanuel. And you all know how corrupt he is. Who she eventually succeeded as mayor, despite her poor record, as Lightfoot faced criticism from criminal justice activists over her poor record when she worked in police accountability and also as a prosecutor. She actually was making police accountable, well, clearly not when she's hiding suspect whereabouts back in 1999. So let's see whether her police accountability and how the police work in her latest statement 2 months ago, when she announced that the city's police department would not assist US immigration and customs enforcement raids, denying ICE access to the city's police database in effort to protect the city's immigration population from the threats of deportation. Is it any wonder Chicago is in such a state, appointing mayors with poor working practices and methods from previous posts? Now, to tie all this in, the news story earlier from Johannesburg, the headline it didn't show was of what took place. It didn't say the headline, blacks don't want immigrants. Now that would have been in a white region, and I'm not comparing, we're both equal. What I'm talking about here is an agenda that's been forced down people's throats. Two questions as why the difference in narrative, and would that mean all black people? Or all white people, all white supremacists, whatever that means? Well, you didn't see that headline because A, it's not on their agenda, and secondly, broad sweep in any group is pure folly to begin with. But we, the people, we have to get smarter. The enemies are not us, it's these think tank policymakers who deliberately create these events, that they've done it all of our lives. It's problem, reaction, solution, over and over again. Don't react the way they want. They want the black people to feel like the whites are attacking them all the time, or the Hispanics. No, they're not. These are created events, all designed to get us all fighting each other. That's why I played the song at the beginning, The Power of Love. We all need to embrace each other, not fight. And it's something that people should ponder on after their repeated attempts now to wipe us all out via wars, famine, vaccines and viruses. People should consider perhaps this is their latest version and also a much cheaper version than other policies to get us to wipe each other out. Think about that long and hard, please. Intel, not much this week. Well, you will have seen, some of you will have seen in the news, which we kind of hinted at last week and the 2 weeks previous, of banking issues. And the HSBC CEO was turfed out this week, and the bank slashed 4,000 jobs overnight. That's not going to get better. Of course, the Dow closed 760 points lower, which is the worst day of 2019 this year. Why is it doing that? Because there's no plunge protection anymore. It's gone. The FDIC, people think, well, my savings et al. Will be safe because of the FDIC. That's the insurance. Not quite. But it's partially keeping banks afloat at the moment. Now, the trust was the FDIC. What people don't know. But what's happening now is the Fed, who are defunct, they don't exist. They don't have license, they can't print dollars, they can't even use dollars in America anymore. But are carrying on because certain people won't act. So the Fed are requesting 10% of all deposits into banks from every bank. And that was supposed to provide insurance to support the bank. But the Fed is just collecting it to keep to themselves. And the banks keep supporting the Fed. You're being looted. So this week all the banks are now begging the Fed for funds. But the Fed have none. They sent it all to Chinese elders. Like Putin did. Like the South African government did. Like the UK government did. Like Mnuchin did until it got pulled back. All banks, and I mean all banks, people seem to think this is all about America, all banks are in beyond dire straits now. The American Treasury is in negative liquidity. China, the whole country, only had 300 million left last week. It's less now. And we have warned several times it's all about to collapse. Hardly any money transactions are moving now behind just the minor amounts. Larger amounts, not so. Why? Because banks are frightened to release larger amounts as they will run out entirely. Citibank has been stealing from customer accounts and sending it to Shanghai on the promise of what is now quite frankly ridiculous notion that they're going to get paid out by the RV. Despite it failing for the past 12 years. And we are entering the time spoken about where we said we will sit back and watch it all unfold. knowing we did everything possible to prevent that collapse. But Kim will not be bailing out the Treasury or the government again until they fulfil their end of the deal. And as that has not been forthcoming, because they don't wish the people to have anything. I'll repeat that again. They don't wish the people to have anything. Then that's that. And a tentative date range, which we knew back in April and was hinted at, for it all to implode is August the 15th through the 17th. The banks ignored the Secret Service to do a deal, the banks ignored the Pentagon to do a deal, and there's nothing left. Just as we warned you all. Work still goes on, and maybe I'll have a small update on the Saturday show, but that's what we're facing. There's nothing left. There's not much in the way of reportable intel this week. There's a lot of positive things going on that I can say. I know people are worried about banks and money and etc., but you can't say I didn't warn you, because I've warned you for several months now. Eventually it will crash. Once that credit line issue was taken away a month ago, there's nothing left. Now the Fed are stealing off all the banks 10% to keep themselves, or the illusion of themselves, going. They have nothing. And all I can say is all hell has broken loose. The mass panic prevails, not just on Earth-based levels either. Their system of control is collapsing around them. And when you have no real leaders, a scattergun approach to things abound. And this is what we're seeing. We are in the final countdown, and the key pondering question is, I've asked it many times, what happens next? Hi all and welcome back. Some people will be concerned with that last piece of intel, and I get that. It's a big part of our lives. But even in, I have a tendency to look at the positive in the bigger picture, not the reaction to the headline, which is why people largely like me a lot, because I will look at it from a different view and present it in a different way. So when you look at even what has been said in this show, it shows the progress we've made on a bigger picture. Yes, the banks are a concern. But the item earlier, balloons to spy on us, is that not telling you their five eyes went down? They went to the most sophisticated system on the planet, to hot air balloons. Oops. The pushing of Libra. They've gone from controlling all the banks, all the currency, all the trust, to wanting fresh air tokens. Oops. And they've gone from stealing off the people, the banks, which they can no longer do, to stealing off each other. The Ouroboros program, right in your face. These are all things that have to be done to create something new and replace it with something better. Yes, there will be hard times as the transition goes on, but the substitute was carrying on with the slavery system, which served no one except the few. So no fear. We've made major victories. That is why they're doing what they're doing now. This next piece was taken from a file I was shown recently, and it will highlight the skullduggery that has gone on for a long time where finances are concerned and who it involves. And it's called the CIA Frontman and the Five-Star Trust. I thought it would give you a good insight into what has been going on in this country, of the looting of funds left, right and centre, and the methods used to do so. It opened with, I deplore the description of General Ferreira as the front man. You are not to be a front man, but rather as a full partner. You shall be our spokesperson and our image unto the public. Baron Philip du Daphne, President of OECD, in a confidential letter to Marion Horne Jr. Marion Horne was connected to Langley. And he stated that it was October 2002 when he met the richest man in the world at the time, and he was in prison alongside me. I was introduced to him while playing chess in the prison courtyard at the Federal Medical Center in Lexington, Kentucky. A tall, heavy-set man with a slight smile approached me and said, "Someone said you knew a lot about computers." A question, not a statement. His reply was, "Well, I use computers in my publishing business." And his reply was, "I need somebody to check a bank account for me. What I need is a screen printout of the balance," he explained. "I can't do it," was the reply. "For a while anyway. I'll be in prison until 2016. And then he was asked, "Do you know someone on the outside who can do it?" The reply was, "Not offhand, but I might be able to find somebody. It depends. Is this something illegal?" "No, it's my account," was the reply. "I can't tell you everything here in front of everybody. Come to my room later and I'll explain," he said. And it was several days later before I bothered to see him. His name was Marion Horne Jr., aka Jr., and he claimed to be the sole signatory, which he was, an executive trustee for Five-Star Trust, which is an Isle of Man trust. For those in America who don't know where that is, it's an island off the coast of England and Wales. It's actually between Ireland, north of Wales, just south of Scotland, and about 3/4 of the way up the UK. And in that account, there was over 100 bank accounts worldwide holding billions of dollars in each. The Five-Star Trust. No government official would publicly admit to the existence of these funds, he said, because they were acquired illegally by various government agencies, primarily from CIA drug trafficking, in concert with the Department of Defense. This is what your soldiers are paid to do. Drug running. Not just Langley, the Department of Defense. Of course, we've got soldiers in Afghanistan for the poppy fields. They're not there for any other reason. Now later he told me there were several $1 trillion in these accounts. No one was really sure how much there was, but I asked him how could there possibly be that much money. And he stated this has been going on since World War II, and the amount of money just kept growing it got out of hand and they don't know what to do with it, Horne says. They don't know what to do. They've got that much money, they don't know what to do with it. How about giving it some to the people? But these people don't work that way. So he asked who was behind this, and the main operation was started by a group of 5, hence the 5-Star Trust. General Edward Lansdale, Major General Robert Ferreira, George Herbert Walker Bush, Spit, Richard Armitage and William Colby. 5 people, 5-Star Trust. So how did you wind up in control of it, I asked. Well, the trust was created to launder part of the money through Mr. Horne, and he was supposed to be paid a commission until they reneged on the deal. Another common practice. And he stated George Bush was the problem, but General Ferreira, who had control of most of it, took me under his wing to help me collect my commission, and he put all the funds under my name, figuring they wouldn't kill me as long as I had control, and it would force them into paying Mr. Horne his commission. Afterwards, Ferreira faked his own death and then hid in Mexico so they wouldn't kill him. Again, a common theme, the Ouroboros plan. They chew each other. What are you in here for, I asked. Horne replied, I tried to use the trust fund as collateral for a real estate loan, and the government didn't want the funds exposed, so they had the Justice Department charge him with wire fraud by claiming the funds didn't exist. My lawyer tried to subpoena the documents from the CIA to prove my claim, but it was denied on the grounds of a familiar name, national security. National security is not for the people, it's to protect their criminal acts. I couldn't prove the funds existed, so I had to plead guilty. My lawyer lied to me and told me I would get 5 years if I didn't plea, but it would have only been 5 years. So what I need now is a screen printout from one of the accounts to prove they exist in order to reverse my conviction. Over the next few weeks, Horne gave him additional details about these clandestine bank accounts, and the money was in off-balance sheet accounts and large amounts of gold bullion within some of them, he said. Yeah, that's likely the gold bullion that was taken out of Fort Knox, of which 88% belonged to Russia. I asked him the same questions over and over, expecting him to catch him in a lie, but his answers never changed. Still, it was too unbelievable to be true, and I made no attempt to verify the accounts. Then the CIA admitted they had records, and Horne handed him a copy of a June 5, 2002 letter his son filed with the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act, that he'd requested the following: all and any records connected or corresponding with the 5-Star Trust, its bank accounts, account number 405110-92, reference 118-65 with a tax ID of 61-6234232, and or Marion Horne Jr. with the Social Security number, excluding any court case documents. And then he handed him the CIA August 9th, 2002 response, which effectively admitted the funds existed and that Marion Horne had deeply been involved with the CIA. And it was signed by one Chris K. for Catherine I. Dyer, Information and Privacy Coordinator. Now, the CIA's response says, we have completed a thorough search of our records and have located material which we have determined must be withheld in its entirety on the basis of PA exemptions. Also, FOIA exemptions, Freedom of Information Act, citing all kinds of section this and paragraph this, and applies to material properly classified pursuant to an executive order in the interest of national defence or foreign policy. They also cited further freedom of information subparagraph sections and this, that and the other that relate to intelligence sources and methods, names of certain agency employees in accordance with the National Security Act of 1947 and or the CIA Act of 1949. See how they closed the shop? With executive orders, the National Security Act and the CIA Act are their structure, so that not only we the people don't get to find out, but neither do the government, neither do the Justice Department. They don't have the need to know. And this is what's been going on in this country over the last 100 years. All departments have no congressional oversight. None. Horne even showed this guy a letter his son sent to the CIA appealing their decision to withhold everything in its entirety instead of only the segregable portions. I still didn't believe it because documents can be forged. One day, however, I was standing right beside Horne when a letter from the CIA arrived denying his Freedom of Information Act appeal. The red meter imprint on the envelope was stamped McLean, Virginia, which is important. The CIA's city and post office location is not Langley, as many believe. It comes under McLean, Virginia. So this guy then knew. None of this, of course, proved the funds in Horne's account contained CIA money, let alone the phenomenal amounts claimed by Horne. It was merely evidence that the Five Star Trust and Horne had been involved with CIA interests at some point. I wanted to believe the government was involved in a massive money laundering conspiracy, but was still sceptical of Horne's explanation for needing me. So he asked, why doesn't your lawyer get the printout? He responded, he doesn't know how to do it discreetly, Horne replied, or he wanted to keep his head on his shoulders, more likely. So you want me to do something that might be dangerous, I protested. Yes, it will be dangerous because they're going to know it instantly when it goes in. But if your man knows computers, he should be able to tap in anonymously. Why should I take the risk, he said. Because I can get you out of prison if you do. Vertically or horizontally, I asked. Now, considering all the publicity and sworn congressional testimony on CIA drug trafficking, he knew the money had to be somewhere, and he decided to go ahead with a sneak and peek at his alleged bank accounts. I expected to discover that Horne's name wasn't on the accounts, but it was. And the first person I contacted on the outside said he didn't want anything to do with, quote, Cocaine Importation Agency, CIA. Others were simply too skeptical to even look, and then I attempted to contact two hackers that I knew. One had moved without leaving a forwarding address, and the other didn't respond to my letter. But I kept Horne appraised of my efforts, and he gave me more information about the Five Star Trust, and I was especially interested in seeing the 400 pages of documents that he possessed. One of them is a 22-page top-secret FBI report, so it's the FBI involved as well, about the CIA's drug trafficking Five Star Trust and me, Horne said, and it was stolen from Teddy Kennedy's house in 1989. Now, he was going to use it as a stepping stone to the White House against George Herbert Walker Bush, Kennedy. But Kennedy never got the Democratic nomination at that time. They're all involved there. I told you there was a family war between the Kennedys and the Bushes. But Teddy Kennedy was going to expose it, the Five Star Trust. And then another Democrat got pushed into a position that they didn't warrant. That's how it works. Can I get copies of the 400 pages, I asked. No problem. Your man can access them through my email address. They're encrypted with the same encryption program used by the Department of Defence, which also has a backdoor into Langley. Oh my. He can download the encryption program and I can give you the password to unlock these files. So they carried on with the printouts, and he said, I've been thinking I ought to just move some of the money into my personal account and pay taxes on it and let them say it doesn't exist then, Horne said. Well, if we do that, I'll have to get a lawyer to approve moving your money, as I don't need another charge. I'll give you my lawyer's phone number for yours to call if you like, but what recourse does the government have? It's my money. Besides, they put me in prison by saying the money didn't exist. How can they put somebody in prison for moving it without admitting it does exist? So that's how Horne was trying to wrap the government up. But the government is controlled by these goons. That's what you have to understand. We don't have a government. The lawyer and the computer man will need to be paid, I said, if we are to move money. How much do you need? Horne asked. How much money do you want? Let's go with 100 million to start. Okay, I want 25 million then. Now, getting someone to move 100 million by computer is not an easy thing to talk someone into, especially when it's monitored by the CIA. Even harder is finding someone you can trust with the account information and password to hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, Horne, he said, didn't hesitate in giving him the codes, but it took several months to locate someone I hoped I could trust. And then I had to figure out how to safely mail the codes to him. But another problem surfaced when Horne changed his mind about providing the 400 pages of documents on the Five Star Trust, and my computer man insisted on seeing them before getting involved. Horne asked what does he need them for? He said he wants to verify everything. It'll be verified when he checks the account. What can I do? He says he won't do it without seeing the files. If they catch you or him with those files, they will kill both of you. So Horne was warning him. And so it took 2 more months to persuade Horne into releasing the files. And since he was completing his sentence, it was decided that he would have someone deliver the files on a computer disk to my agent, and the handoff was made at a department store. After my man read the documents, he backed out. They contain lots of not so nice details on government murders on those files. These are the people that they took out to shut up. Believe me, Ken, they intend to keep the funds secret at any cost. So now he had to find another hacker to move the funds, and he turned to a 68-year-old man he'd met at Yazoo City in Mississippi. He'd just been released from prison and was in the process of raising funds to help me get out, and I knew where to get the funds. His name was Ray Sermon, a former supporter of the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, a Langley-connected group. And although he was a socialist and a fan of Lyndon LaRouche, all I cared about was finding someone who was not happy with our government. Since agents of the US government killed his wife and tried to kill him in Central America, he was the motivated person and perfect for the role. Now, despite my warnings that the government was tracing and monitoring Horne's calls, Ray called him from his cell phone. Though he had an unregistered cell phone, they could still trace the call to his location. Even an unregistered one, they can track it. There's nothing wrong, I was just talking to him, Ray replied. Okay, it's your life. And Horne freely discussed the Five Star Trust with Ray. Too freely, apparently. And the last time he spoke with Ray, he was in a panic. He said, I've got to move away from here. I can't explain right now. And he never heard from him again. In other words, he was taken out. In the meantime, Horne changed his mind about moving the money. He'd begun receiving anonymous calls concerning the survival and prosperity of him and also his family if he tried to move the money or pay taxes on it, or even write a book about it. As a matter of fact, he no longer wanted the screen printout. Instead, he was going to file a lawsuit for the CIA records in the US District Court in Washington, D.C. Now, the lawsuit, as mentioned, Marion Horne was tricked into pleading guilty to wire fraud because his lawyer lied about the amount of time he could face in prison if convicted. In other words, his lawyer was bought off by the agents. Now, in addition, the CIA refused to release the files on him and Five Star Trust that he required to defend himself, and Horne was specifically told in court that they would not be released due to the old doppelganger national security again. Now, most revealing is what his plea agreement stated. Defendant will cease dealings with the Five Star Trust or anyone now or in the past associated with the Five Star Trust. So in other words, they admitted in the court that it existed. Otherwise, why would they tell them not to associate with anyone from the Five Star Trust if it didn't exist? And this is the way legalese people work. And also refrain from any and all representations as to the existence of the foreign bank accounts. Now, at sentencing, however, his judge threw out this provision of the plea agreement after the prosecutor argued that the government should be given control of all Five Star Trust bank accounts. So the judge is saying that Five Star Trust should come under the government. The same bank accounts that Horne was prosecuted for on the grounds they didn't exist. And they throw people in jail for this. Now, throughout Horne's ordeal, others tried to secure the CIA's Five Star Trust files on his behalf, and one person was Harold B. Haggard, a minister and friend of Horne's from Rock Hill, South Carolina. He wrote to the then Senator John Edwards back in 2003, asking for assistance in pursuit of information that could prove the innocence of a man serving time for a crime he didn't commit. Haggard wrote that Horne was a fine Christian man, a good family man, and a Masonic brother of mine. They always protect each other, who I have always found to tell the truth. And attached to the Reverend Haggard's letter to Senator Edwards was a brief statement by Horne, and it reads, in relevant parts, the government contended in the indictment and charges against Marion Horne Jr. that Five Star Trust and worldwide accounts in US dollars in the account numbers did not exist, and Horne was using these to obtain monies from different people, but using the Five Star Trust accounts. Again, this is how they operate. They'll deny that exists and then throw you on bogus charges that you're robbing money off people when already stated it doesn't exist. So how can you rob something that doesn't exist? It's ass backward. However, in each case there was no damaged party coming forward. Why? Because he wasn't stealing off anyone. And this is where natural law, or common law, whatever you want to call it, comes in. If there's no damaged party, there's no harm done, and so there's no crime. But they don't want that, you see. They want it all wrapped up in bullshit legalese, and let's all talk bollocks and argue over minute points and subsection this and paragraph that, which nobody understands. And if you think you do, you're more stupid than you think. Only the government was portrayed as the damaged party, but the government wasn't Five Star Trust. So there is no damaged party. Now, Horne's former attorney from DC, Mr. Lou Rivlin, who's the ex-husband of Ms. Alice Rivlin, who was the former head of Office of Management and Budget under the control of Bill Clinton, as well as the former Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve, and has confirmed the accounts of Five Star Trust through Mr. Bill Seawee, who is a friend of Alice Rivlin and a graduate of West Point Academy. Lots of clowns come out of there. Who confirmed that the Five Star Trust does exist, and the accounts of Five Star Trust number in several hundred, that's the bank accounts, and range into the trillions of dollars in those hundred of bank accounts. Lewin was listed as a Washington DC legal directory, and Mr. Horne and Mr. Rivlin, along with Dr. Lev Mack, attended a meeting at the Pentagon in Washington on February 11th, 1999, with the Under Secretary of Defense, Admiral David Oliver, and others, wherein the accounts of Five Star Trust were discussed with the Under Secretary of Defense on how this might be resolved. So at this point they couldn't kill Horne. He knew too much, he told too many people. And they also were frightened of, he had some of the files, who he dispersed it to. If he didn't, Mr. Horne would have been took out. This is how these people work. Now, an earlier September the 26th, 2002 letter was mailed to the former Senator Tom Daschle by Horne's daughter Sonia Taylor, and she requested Daschle's assistance in getting Five Star Trust files released. She wrote and stated the details that he was accused of wire fraud on the premise that the accounts put up for collateral didn't exist. And a friend of President George W. Bush, Mr. Cox, a US Secret Service agent and private bodyguard of Bush for 4 years, said that my father was trying to defraud people by using accounts that didn't actually exist. So here's the Bush crew hiding the funds again. However, Mr. Horne had no intentions of defrauding anyone. These accounts were frozen. They do, however, exist, and we believe that the numbers in the government are using the monies in these accounts that are actually in the name of Five Star Trust and Marion Horne Jr. So in other words, they'd done some clever accounting and shifted it towards the government of which Bush was in charge of. Idiot Bush, that is. Now, one of the senators, Edwards or Daschle, submitted a fax letter concerning the processing of Horne's FOIA request, but since all existing records were still denied release, Horne took the next step. And on March 2003, he then filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court in the District of Columbia. You can check up those records, Marion Horne Jr. versus George W. Bush et al. Now the et al. Being George Tenet, who was the director of the CIA at the time, and it was a civil action number 03-0725. Now, in response to the lawsuit, the government assigned 3 attorneys to the defence of Bush and Tenet: Roscoe C. Howard, the United States Attorney, Mark E. Nagel, and Stratton C. Strand, Assistant U.S. Attorneys. Horn, on the other hand, had been rendered destitute and was forced to wing it pro se. Again, another common theme. In September of 2003, Madeline A. Dawn, the Information Review Office Director of Operations for the CIA, filed a 31-page declaration into the district court at the request of defence attorneys. Now, Miss Dawn was also the records validation officer and had a top secret clearance with delegated authority to review the CIA files on Marion Horn and the Five Star Trust. Miss Horn then goes into court. You know what happens next. And stated in her declaration that a diligent search of the Directorate of Operation files, which is the component responsible for the clandestine collection of foreign intelligence from human resources and covert operations, turned up 2 records. These were described by Miss Dawn as 2 cables consisting of 1.5 pages and 8 partial lines of text. Now, these are the 2 records, the same 2 records that the CIA refused to give Marion Horn, even in redacted form. They were being held under pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act exemption and the Privacy Act exemption. And Dawn states in her declaration that the 2 records are operational cables to or from a CIA covert field installation, and so are classified secret. She then went on to give a justification for withholding them. I am responsible for the determination set forth in this declaration. After carefully reviewing the 2 documents at issue, I personally have determined and affirm that CIA information withheld in this matter may not be released for the following reasons. A. The withheld information, if released, reasonably could be expected to lead to the unauthorized disclosure of intelligence activities, sources and or methods, including cryptonyms, targets of collections and unacknowledged and covert locations which the DCI is charged with protecting under the National Security Act again. So, yet again, when something gets disclosed, they just cite this act and that act and cover the whole thing up, when that information should be available to the government. It's not. And this is what has to change in and of the government. There shouldn't be any organisation with that type of power where they have zero oversight. There were some files that even the Justice Department in the Mueller investigation was deemed not sufficient clearance to view. The Justice Court Department didn't have the sufficient security clearance to view the documents. Really? And she went on and given another load of subsection this and bollocks that, paragraph this. In other words, we don't want you out in what we're up to. Now, the attorneys representing Bush and Tenet filed a motion for summary judgment on October 22, 2003, with Madeline Dawn's 31 declaration page attached, and Horn replied with a cross motion for summary judgment in his favour. Not surprisingly, the US District Court Judge Paul L. Friedman denied Horn's cross motion and to judgment for Bush and Tenet instead, and no CIA records would be released. Now, analysis of Miss Dawn's declaration is a cover-up, clearly. First, it's highly questionable whether releasing 2 cables consisting of 1.5 pages and 8 partial lines of text would endanger anyone, never mind national security. And this is especially true since the normal procedure is to redact any of the sensitive parts. But clearly, it outed Bush Sr. et al. And the Five Star Trust. But regardless of this suspicious claim, the inescapable fact is that there is no reason exists to maintain classified records of the Five Star Trust and Marion Horn unless they relate to the CIA secret accounts. The question then remains is, why has the CIA got secret accounts that the government is not aware of? Who are these people? Now, the government and its agencies lied and hid the documents as revealed in the FBI report. The point is, why didn't the FBI chase up on it? Why did they do nothing? Wasn't there a report about the FBI not doing nothing on other criminal incidents recently? Even in the Mueller report. Again, it's a common theme. And yet it is inconceivable the CIA would destroy all records of their well-publicised drug trafficking and also money laundering operations. They would certainly maintain records of ongoing activities by their own agents. Now, lastly, since I'd confirmed that the vast amounts of money in the Five Star Trust bank accounts and knew of the CIA's involvement, he submitted a specific Freedom of Information Act request to the CIA in August 2009, and he requested only those records related to the Five Star Trust and, listen closely, the US Mortgage and Trust Company as conduits for laundering drug trafficking profits or other illicit funds. The Five Star Trust and the US Mortgage and Trust Company. Want to know why the mortgages went bust? There's your answer. That was in 2009 when he filed for that. When did the mortgages collapse? 2008. So in other words, what Horn was requested was excluding the operational cables on Horn and the Five Star Trust admitted by Madeline Dawn, unless they related to drug trafficking and money laundering. Now, in September of 2009, a letter from Dolores M. Nelson, who is Information and Privacy Coordinator for the CIA, and it stated, my request was denied pursuant to Freedom of Information Act exempt category blah 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 blah. And if these are the same records denied Horn, which seems likely, then it proves they are related to the CIA's money laundering activities with FST and USMT, Five Star Trust, US Mortgage Company. And the CIA will obviously never admit their criminal activity or connection to these secret bank accounts, and the second paragraph of their response reflects this. Take note that the CIA admitted having records on Marion Horn and the Five Star Trust in 2002, but when I made a specific request for only CIA drug trafficking and money laundering records through the FST and USMT, they refused to confirm or deny the existence of such records. And yet it was mentioned in the court. This wasn't a change on FOIA policy, because only months earlier Horne had requested records on himself and was told no records exist. So apparently Mr. Horne doesn't exist. Well, how can Mr. Horne serve prison time if Mr. Horne doesn't exist? You see how ridiculous this all sounds? And this is what happens when you don't have oversight. That's the key to all of this. In other words, when they have the records of CIA misconduct, the existence or non-existence of these records suddenly becomes classified. In other words, they're covering up criminal acts. And the FBI clearly knew that and ignored it. And those people who investigated that should be held accountable in my book. You failed to do your job. If everybody else fails to do their job in the manner they did, they get sacked. And yet these organisations, they just carry on and get moved to another position. Nice little payoff, brown envelope in the back pocket, and on it goes again. We need not be concerned, he said, over the CIA's usual obfuscation and cover-up, because conclusive proof of these secret bank accounts is revealed in this book. Nice try, CIA agents, he said. You see, this is how the top-end clowns work. It's all there. That's why I covered this story. And it's a warning to the likes of the Keenans of this world, the Jespers, Ray Dan, Leo Wonter, and many others have or will find out that they just use people and discard them like pieces of trash. What happened to Horne happened to Leo Wonter. He was the lower end commission guy, and they sold him out and threw him in jail. This is what these people do. And this is why I've said in this show, your badges and titles will not protect you. They just won't. Even the entity known as Anne, head of the Blue Dragon, is being thrown under the bus now, and many others will follow. Walk away. But remember now, the whole world's watching. All of you. Hi all, and welcome back. A fairly long piece that, but it explains how their system works. You know, I would love to create a situation when you're going, the lawyers are going through paragraph B, subsection this, and paragraph that, and subsection that. I would like to stop them and get them to read every single word of that subsection, because that's what they do it for. They talk bollocks, and they assume that everybody knows this when they don't even know it themselves. They're just citing this, that, and the other, and it's how they get away with it, because nobody knows what it means. It's all babble. You know, imagine, please read that whole section out. Yeah. Be there all day. That'll be a good laugh, because people need to understand this is what they do. They just waffle in court with lying lawyers doing everything to cover up the truth. You know, and then they have the audacity to call it a justice system, more like just us system, because it's certainly not justice for the average people once you go in their establishments. I'm going to do a piece now, and then we're going to have a music break, and then we're going to have something that will be rather pleasing to many of the listeners. I'm going to skip a piece out. I'll put that in for next week. It was about the Committee of 300. That'll go in next week. But I want to talk about the cycle of abuse that is so prevalent here. And it has, like hierarchy, been passed down from race to race, species to species, and groups to groups, and also generation to generation. And here it all started with the Abraxans. It wasn't just them. It was a group of humanoid-based species whose ego went off the charts of their own self-importance, followed by greed, followed by subversion, followed by a complete dereliction in and of the sanctity of life. Living beings, planets, whole solar systems all deemed their property and did what they wished with it. Now, predictably, as the movie Jupiter Ascending covers, there were family disputes at the top levels. Again, that was all passed down, all fighting for more control and dominating more regions. Replicated with Alulu and Anu, Cain and Abel, Anu, Inanna and Marduk, Set and Osiris, all too familiar back then, and all too prevalent now in your own family structures. And this is what I spoke about recently, about healing the past lines. It's not just our species that needs to do it either, but all in this universe and some beyond. All of it is one giant harvesting machine, designed to feed off anything that moves, except where it came to this human vessel, the elixir of life, as also stated in that movie. People placed on tables and the life force energy extracted. Today it is known as adrenochrome extraction. Same thing. And there's a common saying, as above, so below. But perhaps with this piece we need a new one. As before, and so it is now. And this has to be corrected by everyone going forward. And I mean everyone. This is a participation game, and all must abide by. The days of waiting for saviours to save people who largely won't even save themselves, but also people who put little effort into helping or saving themselves, is over. It's done. You save you, and you need to get that quickly. So who do you think taught them being the clowns and these elites, cabal, whatever you want to call them, that adrenochrome and other dark and light magic, neither of which is good? All passed down for those weak enough to sell themselves and souls out for the illusion of fame, titles, wealth and power. But also groups like the military, to gain favour with what they think is new and advanced tech. It's not by a long shot. But also, do you think an oppressor, which is the ones who gave them it, do you think they would give you their latest gadgets and put themselves under threat if you turned against them? Think again. These entities, whilst by far are not the brightest, they have perfected a system of control by the virtue of having raided and engaging so many other solar systems and planets. This is like a drug to entities of the psychotic mindset. Nothing is ever enough. Like a junkie always needs another fix. One could go back to many epochs of time But things started to really get bad here around 150,000 years ago, with the arrival, yes, you heard that right, the arrival of the craft called Atlantis. No, Atlantis was not some continent in the Atlantic Ocean that collapsed into the sea. That continent that collapsed into the sea was the Arya 40,000 years later, and was in northern Russia, not the Atlantic or the Pacific. Was there whole cities that resembled what Plato wrote? Yes, absolutely. But they were not our technological marvels, but theirs. For many years, humans lived peacefully with these off-world entities here, developed a high level of spirituality, in tune with nature and plant life, like the movie Avatar, which is why so many people around the world came out of watching that movie crying, as was reported. Latent memories, and also a reflection of how bad things are here now, and so far removed from that past dance with harmony. The Urs were one of those groups that taught species a better way. It was they who began teaching the rest of humanity, outside of the Arya, later known as Hyperborea, and its sister island, Thule. A better way to interact and be, until the dark forces called the Koshis back then. More familiar names would be the various reptile groups, ant-based groups, but also humanoids like the Abraxans and the Aldazani. Various species have had their upbringing here, including the Draco, until one group wiped out their food supply, the dinosaurs, which then left humans as a new source of food on their menu. You see, it's consequences of actions. It has different timelines by removing just one item. It's a symbiotic effect. That one decision changed everything. Certainly we were not top of the food chain anymore. But the cycle of abuse went further as more and more fake gods turned up, be it Roman, Greek, Egyptian or Sumerian. None of them were gods at all. None of them were godly either. Just the repeat of the previous cycles of abuse that went round and round like a hamster in a wheel. Real godly people, by godly I mean those of higher soul growth development, teach others, not destroy them. But teaching this particular vessel and species was deemed by the dark forces a must stop at all costs item, and so it unfolded. 16,500 years ago, back came the Draco with their lies and promises of help and support, and despite warnings by the elders here, the tribes went ahead and took the seducement pill. But all too quickly that faded and a full-on control system was underway. The parents, their version of Humans 1.0, created much earlier, were designated to control the humans on the planet, and they were abused and lied to by the Draco. The parents, or 13 of the 21 of them, ran the next stage down, the Covens, the Dark Magicians, the Watchers, game players and general all-round evil, to run amok amongst the population, oblivious of their powers, existence, or if it was all real or just magic or just a coincidence. There are no coincidences in life, and this group largely played those roles. But they were abused and lied to by the parents. The covens then control the families, the bloodlines, the royalty, the dragon groups, mainly the blue, green and black et al., who were abused and lied to by the covens. The 301 families controlled the Bilderbergers, the Club of Rome, the Freemasonic and the other secret society groups, religious orders, the factions, the military, the security groups, and subsequently down to the pit of the control system, known as politicians. All these groups are in the bottom 25% of the former control system. All these groups were abused and lied to as well. These groups controlled those outside of the system. That's us. And they abused and lied to us. We then created another system amongst us and abused and lied to each other. Are you seeing the pattern now? The cycle of abuse just rolls on over 100,000 of years and is still prevalent today. Now, much of that structure and abuse has been eliminated or rendered barely operable. They have on each level with the ones they have left. They have to correct their ways and their abuse. And they also have to admit that they were lying and they were lied to also. Now we, outside of the control system, have to do likewise. Quit the divide and conquer that is largely based in the comparative mindset game, which we discussed earlier. It has not served us well. In fact, it's not only not served us well, it's not served us at all. It's a death and debt cycle. We have not served each other well. And we can make excuses until the cows come home as to why. But as I've stated previously, there was never a law or an executive order stating for humans not to care for each other. We did that. The cycle ends with us. We're at the bottom, but we are the many. The cycle can be broken by us and filtered up the chain of the former command structure. Be the way shower, and remember, feel like playing that song again. Kind of popular, that song, and it gets you going, and the lyrics mean a lot. The progression of man, not playing external but going internal and remembering who I am. My name is human. We've kind of gone away from those qualities of what it means to be human, and that last piece says it all. We'll have more of that in Saturday's show. We'll go along similar lines, in portions of it anyway. This next message comes directly from Kim, the trustee of Manor World Holding Trust. And all need to pay attention. Listeners, members, clowns and minions who we know listen to this show. Take heed. This piece will form the background of the show this coming Saturday also. Quote, "We have reached a critical point. in which humanity has a chance to rise up and become its own ruler. The backwork has all been done. There is nothing standing in your way. They fear you, not the other way round. Let me explain. The three main controllers of humanity and the order givers to the order and the parents, families, family masters. If you do not know what this is, then you should find out. Of course, our members are aware of it. Those three main controllers have pulled all support from their covens and the 13 bloodline families known to most of you as Rothschilds, Chinese elders, Bowers, Vatican, Black Sun, Greens, Browns, Whites, the colour-coded programs, and so forth. Many names you don't even know exist. The upper people don't even use names, they use code names, like the Dark Prince, which could have been any one of 21 people and not necessarily male. A lot of the internet talk about the cabal doesn't exist in reality. Remember, they create the problem and create the solution. Create the devil and create the saviour. Start the war, create the boogeyman, then create the hero. This is their game of control. Don't let them fool you. Like I said, this is not just for we the people either. All of those who thought you were in control. You're not. You never were. Kim goes on. The money system was a means of control. It was created to do nothing but take control over all the wealth of the world. That wealth was human souls, energy and minerals, not currencies. He, being M. Marduk, issued stupid family registrations and trust papers like they meant anything to him at all, and they all fell for it. The whole system was nothing but a great big lie, but it kept the order in control. Known to him as the slave masters. Yes, you, the 153, the order, you were called the slave masters. Suck it up. They were never called the royals or the kings and queens they portray themselves to be. He loved to lie. I knew him well. So here I stand, and there you are. When is Kim going to transfer the money? We need money. I hear this on a daily basis, and it is frustrating to me. Why? Because there is a bigger picture here. Learn it. For whatever reason, I now have M's accountant, M's assets, and yes, M's control over the money magic system. I have extended olive branches to the parents, covens and their minions you know as royals, the Asians, the Brits, their tribes. They all refused to face the fact that M was a liar. He lied to all of them with Grandoir's promises of being the rulers, the owners and controllers of planet Earth. Told Putin he would be the king of the Earth, which is why Putin is still giving Russian money to fake Chinese elders. Marduk lied face it, and move on. To those of you, those begging them for money and exchanges of air tokens and dinars, dongs, and insert other currencies here, they were the money issuers for thousands of years. Greedy little piglets didn't share any with you. You see, it's not just those who are considered greedy piglets, it was you as well. But you think today is the day. It's never going to happen. They still sit, yes, including the Chinese elders or other Asian variety, in their big mansions eating their $5,000 meals with their concubines and maids. They can afford to give all of you at least a little money out of their own pocket, but they have not, and they never will. In order to be controlled, all you have to do is sit back and wait for someone else to do something, whether that's me or anybody else. Every single day that goes by that you do nothing, they do something. A new war. Oh, look here at what Iran, Iraq, the Russians are doing. Create the problem, create the solution. The only way to win the game is to not play. It's their game. They are eating each other alive currently with false promises and no delivery. Bitcoin, anyone? Oh, you will be outside the system. Or how about Libra? Just another currency they control. Create the term cabal for the bad guys, and the good guys are the Chinese elders. They are the same people from the same order, and all take orders from the same people. Wake up. The groundwork has been laid for you. The control system of the masses is rapidly deteriorating. When something goes down, something must take its place. And I hope I didn't make a mistake when I bet it on all of you. The people. There are days I feel like I did. Maybe all of you are not ready. Don't let us down. By us, I mean the human race. Stop looking for a saviour. If you find one, most likely it was created for you. Oh wow, you say, the mainstream media is reporting the deep state now. Seriously, they want you to know. Here is the boogeyman, little sheeples. Now where is the saviour? It was BRICS, then it was Putin, then it was the Chinese elders. Next it will be just another person from their group. We need a global reset, you say. Well, let me tell you something. Either you are going to be the new leaders, or they will appoint one for you. It's just that simple. There is a reason the alternative media is being filled with their people right now. Old dogs coming back. New ones appearing. They are losing control of those that pay attention. Those that are awake or awakening. Those of you that consider that to be you, become the leaders of this reset. And I'm not referring to the currency reset either. What's the plan? I'm asked constantly. Why would I make a new plan without you? I'm not one of them. I'm not part of them. I am part of you. The new plan should be written with all of you, not just some council of people of my creation. Does that make sense? There must be a new plan. Where is everyone? Kind of reminds me of the Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. Hello, hello, is anybody in there? Nod if you can hear me. Now is the time. In short, stop looking for a saviour, be that a human or otherwise. If you find one, it was most likely created for you. Yes, there is a source, God. Dial direct. You do not need an intercessor, nor an interpretation, nor a book to do so. To make a new plan, there must be a human, live human soul who participates and makes decisions. Stop just reading blogs and then going about your day. Think. Please think. The THI groups were created for this purpose. Think tanks for the people. Anyone can join there. There are no restrictions. The new plan creators. And I hope all the THI groups are listening. You are supposed to gather the masses and formulate the new plan. Please, if you haven't started yet, please start now. If you need guidance or direction, please ask. If your system or new plan has a hierarchy system to it, it's wrong. Start it all again. Help me help you. And remember, I bet it all. My life, my security, my job, my money, my time, my family, my home, and everything else they have taken from me to stand for you. I believe in you. Source God believes in you. We only need to unite to make this happen. I am not your saviour. You are. That was the message from Kim. It will form the background to Saturday's show. To end this show tonight is my added pieces to that passionate letter from Kim. Everything has collapsed. And I mean everything. Our system of control has undergone several events. Whilst everybody waited for the event, while you waited, thankfully others made it happen. Extinction level events on humanity, in fact several of them, like Ebola and several other viruses. Rock throwing at the planet. Yes, it does happen. Air, water and food poisoning. World War III, Armageddon, the list goes on, and they all failed. The main Draco left and failed. The Saturn moon matrix failed. The electromagnetic veil failed. Plus their recent moon attempt failed. Martial law failed. Soul traps, memory wipes and reincarnation technology all failed. Marduk, Anu and the Manted Queen all failed. Their subjugation against the various species below our feet also failed. Demons removed and jinns failing. The Draco failed, the parents failed, the covens failed, the Illuminati failed, the families failed, the dragon groups failed, the SSP failed, and their factions are failing. Sniper attacks, gang attacks, jinn attacks, Dorsey attacks, financial attacks, psychic attacks, family attacks, and agents' attacks on us all failed. Their banking system of harvesting failed. Babylon, Hercules, Prometheus and Annabelle systems all failed. Their black screens and codes all failed. The mind control construct experiment we call religion is failing. His story is falling apart. Their media is falling apart. Their alt media is falling apart. Their politicians are falling apart. Their narrative is falling apart. Fake creations like BRICS, NESARA, GESARA, San Germain trusts failed. RVs, Bitcoin and Libra falling apart or failed. Their US military experiment has failed. 18 years in Afghanistan and similar in Iraq tells you that. Neo-Hawks and their agency minions failed. Israel failing. It's all there for those that overview and see. But the propensity for many is to wait for the external fix of funds or mass arrests, then the media announcement. All those may come one day, but do you wait for it or prepare for something else? Get rid of this group and that corporation we hear often, but how many says, what will we replace it with? Or how are we going to fund or transition it? This is the lack of future thinking. No future thinking equals no future progress. And will drag out longer than you all think the mass arrests should have happened. Fire 536 or whatever number is politicians. Fine. Until you ask, what happens next? And there's crickets. The groups are there for you to discuss those possibilities, not just how you will divvy up the funding for the projects. Think different, act different are not just cliches, they are your new Bible for progress. Don't like the way the current government operates? Can you help and support them develop a new one? Don't like how schools are run? You develop a new one. Don't like the cost of homes and how they are built? Develop a new one. Don't like how the justice system works? You develop a new one. Don't like how the health system works. Again, you develop a new one. These are your responsibilities, all of you. Too many content for Kim and or me to come up with solutions or ideas for you. What if Kim and I came up with all the solutions? Do you think they all will be happy with those solutions? Of course not. No one solution fits all, which is why Kim and I are asking you to provide them. Your input, your ideas, your solutions, as this is about us all. Remember that. Rest assured, if you don't come up with solutions, the remnants of the clowns will provide more for you. And you all know how that works, or actually it doesn't. Final message is to the clowns and their minions. Sucking lemons all day makes you bitter. You've lost everything, and that hurts. You feel like you've been stolen off and sold out. Welcome to our world. Perhaps for the rest of your days here this lifetime, you can ponder on the selfishness and your own greed. Because one day the boot will be on the other foot. Oops, that day has arrived. We have the opportunity to go forward together, all of us. Or we can leave you to wither away and die. Your choice. Until then, I will leave you with a song reminder. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I'll see you all at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now.